everybody would take a seat, please. All right, the chair will entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
I'll make a motion on it.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Gines. Do we have a second? To suspend the rules, do we have a second? What? Who did? Second by Mr. Barrett. The clerk would read the additions. Oh, all in favor? All in favor?
Are we going to favor it?
All in favor of suspending the rules? Okay. All opposed? 5-2. Now if the clerk would read the additions.
To our consent agenda, we're adding item 5Q, resolution confirming and approving appointment of Stephen Eckert as municipal prosecutor for municipal court. We're adding item 5R, resolution approving Stephen Eckert as additional special counsel for the city of Biloxi. We're adding 5S, resolution confirming and approving the appointment of Sarah Reese as municipal prosecutor for the city of Biloxi. We're adding item 5T, resolution authorizing execution of grant of access and temporary use waiver of liability and hold harmless agreement with the Biloxi Housing Authority for use of property during cruising the coast. We're adding item 5U, resolution authorizing agreement between the city of Biloxi and Motion Picture Licensing Corporation for umbrella license to show movies at the Donald Snyder Center. We're adding item 5B, resolution to enter into cost per copy agreements with R.J. Young. And finally, we're adding item 5W, resolution authorizing the execution of a bill of sale for surplus air truck to be sold by the Biloxi Fire Department to the Tangipahoa Parish Rural Fire Protection District.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes.
All in favor? All in favor of the? Well, we're voting on the agenda as amended, right? Do I have a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by Mr. Gines. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Barrett. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 5-2. Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to the presentation agenda. Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to welcome everyone to our last meeting of the fiscal year. I think a lot of activity going on. A little bit of personal note: we got the nation's biggest football tournament taking place over 6 golf courses here. It's called the Slavic Invitational, 44th year. A lot of things are happening right now. A lot of roast beef being sliced and ham being sliced and stuffed mushrooms, but that's all going on at the Slavic Benevolent Association Hall. And we've got, of course, waiting for Cruising the Coast to come up and doing some cool things there. Of course, I really get excited about Howard Avenue coming together. A lot of things happening. One thing I do want to mention, the passing and the life well lived of one of our native citizens, Sister Eileen Marino, and born July 10th, 1929, and died September 20th, 2018. Sister Eileen Marino was born Carmel Agnes Marino. She was one of 8 children born to Jesus Maria Marino and Irene Bradford Marino. Sister Eileen graduated from our Mother of Sorrows in May of 1947. And after years of work, she entered the Oblate Sisters of Providence in Baltimore, Maryland. After her novitiate, she was professed a sister of that order. Sister Eileen was sister of Claire Marino Rodman and the late Archbishop Eugene Marino. Christian burial service will take place in Baltimore on October 1. So I really want to note that passing of a part of our family of Biloxi. And of course, she will be missed, and I know she's looking down from heaven on this city of ours. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a department report by Oscar Arenda?
Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Matranga, Project Manager for Oscar Renta Contracting. Well, just to start on the west side of the project, we are on Porter. You can see the landscape of that particular section has drastically changed. We've started landscaping all of Porter to Park Circle, and then the lateral streets to Park Circle. There's a few houses where we're going to need retaining walls, and so those streets aren't being done until the retaining walls get done. The roads were lower than they were before in some of the yards. The grading just doesn't make sense, so we're going to put retaining walls. We have finished all the sidewalks and driveways in that area as well. So we're just coming right behind it, grassing, seeding, landscaping. Looking really good. Then on Quarrens, we are finishing up installing the storm drain, the main trunk line of the storm drain. And when we finish that work, because of Hemp Hill's work south of the tracks and them having to close off Quarrens on the south side, we have crossings to do that'll take up the whole section of the street, and we intend to do that on Saturdays when Hemp Hill isn't working, so that we can then open the south side of the street so there'll be access at all times. Once we finish with the work on Quarrens, then we're going to jump over to Porter south of Division and start with the sewer. We are installing storm drain on Benaki. We're waiting on the reason we haven't started the bores yet. I feel like I'm talking loud. Am I talking too loud? Okay. The reason we haven't started the bores yet is we're waiting on CSX. We can't start any of that work until we get a flagman, and that got pushed back a couple of weeks, so we started on the storm drain. Can I turn this little thing on? Is there anyone that can? I'm sorry, I should tell you before I get up here. I just thought I'd bring a couple of pictures so y'all could see if you haven't been out there. We started out right here. We have to build an outfall. An outfall into the canal, and it's a 8x4 box culvert, so you can see how big it is. But we're starting there until we can start working on the CSX portion and the bore. This is looking south down the street, just to give you a little idea of what we're doing over there. I didn't bring notes today, but I know everything pretty well. We're laying sidewalk down Hopkins, and then we'll come right behind that with the landscaping. The biggest, the biggest thing that we have going on right now, obviously, is Division Street. Yesterday we paved from Main Street all the way past Nixon to Huff Alley. That was a really big accomplishment. We paved Huff Alley today. That's complete. And we'll follow behind Huff Alley here shortly, if not by the end of the week. Next week, just doing some grading out. It's a pretty sharp little drop off, I noticed. There's no curb on that street. And also there was a little section of Hayes street that didn't get asphalt, and we put that in there today. There's a couple of crossings that we made for some repairs on Nichols that is getting asphalt, and then on Lee Street, just north of Division, we're putting asphalt there as well. We are making a big push to get, so now the only section of Division Street that isn't paved is from Main Street to Lemieux. And in that short little block, we have 8 concrete structures, drainage structures that have to be built. We have some box culvert that has to be built, but we feel pretty confident that we'll beat the deadline we set forth to y'all, which was by the end of the month, and have it done by the middle of October. But there's a lot of work going on in that area right now. And just to, again, show you some pictures of some things that we're coming across. So right there, that's AT&T duck bank. We had to break off so that we could get our box down underneath it. And so we'll be making a structure right there, tying into that, coming across the street. This is the north end of the street. This is the south end. We have a box to make right here with these two. And then another thing that we came across, and it's little things like this that cause some time. This is on the same area division between Lemieux and Maine. This pipe right here is a 48-inch pipe. It was supposed to just keep on going. Well, if you could see this right there, that's a gas main that's not on the plans, wasn't supposed to be there. Well, this pipe can't get underneath that gas main. So it's not, I mean, that's what we faced this whole project. But you could see that pipe isn't going to go underneath the gas main. So we had to get with the city, and we decided in order to get under the gas main, we laid 2 of these. I just have a picture of one, but we laid 2 side by side. Well, the reason I guess I'm bringing it up and why it takes more time is we could have just kept on laying and been done with that. But now right here, we have to build a drainage structure to tie those 2 things in together. Then we have to build another structure over there. And then it takes longer to lay 2 pipe than it does to lay 1 pipe. So it's just one of the other issues that we've encountered due to the gas main on Division Street, which just makes it all more difficult. So anyways, as we're finishing up with the structures off of Lemieux and finishing up with the structures off of Main, we have the road crew right behind them, just digging it out, putting in rock, and to where hopefully it'll be very quick for us to put in the paving. Hopefully by the end of next week, all the concrete work will be done and all the mucking out, and then we'll get the asphalt people back in here. And then the base course of asphalt will be complete from one end to the other. The next areas where we have curb going down Delani. That road base is installed on that street. We have curbing, lots of driveways on Delani, so it's taken us, we've given them a goal to be done in 3 days. I think that they can do that. It's typically a 4 or 5 day type of street, and it's a very narrow street, so it makes operating on that street pretty difficult and challenging. But Delani will be in the next round of paving at the end of October. We're working on Lemieux north of Division. More than likely, a good portion of that road should be paved by the end of October, if everything goes well. The traffic is becoming a problem. The more asphalt you get down, the faster everybody goes, even though they go fast on the streets that aren't asphalted as well. But Lemieux is, some of my guys have had a close call, so we're trying not to shut Lemieux down until, as we're just trying not to shut it down, but we're going to have my safety managers assess the situation to see if that's something that we need to do to protect our guys and then the residents as well, you know. If they don't know to not get in somebody's turn radius of those machines, you can't, you know, if a car drives right up on them and we don't see them, so it's for the residents' safety as well. We are, until Lemieux is ready for curbing, our curbing crew is probably going to drop back on all those areas of division that we've poured paving for and do sidewalk and start getting the sidewalk, Henry Beck Park, all that area cleaned up and fixed up. Let me see if I missed anything. I think that's about the gist of it. And then we also have a new landscaping / grass mowing crew. We made a big push a few weeks ago, got a subcontractor out, did a lot of bush hogging, weed killing in the sidewalks, everything kind of east of Crawford and from the brick house to down Back Bay and Bayview. And now they'll be concentrating, as well as maintaining that area, concentrating on getting the other areas like Holly and Penny and all the other areas where there needs to be grass cutting and weed killing and stuff like that. You'll see a big difference in that come next week, I'm pretty sure. Some of the weed killer, because of all the rain we've had, we're having to apply that a second and third time. But I think that's about it.
Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming, first of all. I've noticed a big difference, and I appreciate you getting Huff Alley. That was one of the big areas. Division Street is starting to take shape, and a lot of residents have taken notice of those things. I actually drove Huff Alley today and saw how that was laid, and everybody walkway and going into the driveway was done greatly. The only questions I have really is, I was going to ask you about the weed cutting and grass cutting, but you addressed most of the things I had a concern with. You pretty much addressed. The only thing now is the school, and I think you mentioned something about doing the north side of Lemieux, where the school's at.
Mm-hmm.
Is there kind of a time frame in that area?
I believe it should be if we can get the curbing down, it should be by the end of this month. If not, it'll be it's our next area to pave. Like we have Delaney done, curbing, rock, and we're on Lemieux right now, our road crew. That's our one road crew. Once we get division done, then we'll probably have 2 road crews on Lemieux to kind of speed things up, because we need to start working on Main, but until Lemieux is done, we won't start working on Main. So Lemieux is our next kind of wave of attack.
Right, and I noticed when you were talking about taking precautions, I would take the most, like you guys did, what was that, Sunday to work in the area there. You guys went on ahead and you moved Sunday, but I would also do the same thing with the south side of Lemieux Street, south of the Division, and take all the precautions by go ahead and shutting it down, because, like you say, safety is essential, and with the traffic that comes through there,
Lots of
in
foot
my opinion,
traffic.
I would just shut it down.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
But other than that, I have nothing else. You
Thank
guys have lately, y'all been moving, and that's more satisfying than anything. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Thank you. We'll now move on to council reports. Mr. Lawrence.
Yeah, I have a few things I need to address. My concern is still about the budget. I don't feel like we actually passed that budget legally. It states in the law you have to have a video, you have to have a true video, a picture of the man that wasn't here. So I felt like the budget was passed with a mistake in it, 11.5 million, which they said was the mistake that they made, not a big problem. But to me, we need to put the thing back on the table, correct the mistake, and then pass it in front of the whole council. That way you have no problem. Now, the other problem I have, the $1.5 million that we passed the deficit budget, we had suggested in the meeting to move the $1.5 million from the economic development and you to pass the balanced budget. I mean, that made 100. There's no reason for the city of Biloxi to pass a negative budget. The money was there. All you had to do is move it over there, make the budget balance. So there's no reason that this city should ever pass a deficit budget. That's another opinion. So I think if we did all that, straightened it all out, like you even suggested yourself, Mayor, that's probably the best thing to do. We should have done that. And then put the thing back on the table and pass it. I know it's already been advertised in the press, stuff like that. My problem was I got the law that Peter gave me. I don't see where we did what we were supposed to do when somebody wasn't here. I mean, I was on my way, but they voted before I got here. But anyway, it should have been done with a live video to prove that somebody was here listening, paying attention to the meeting. So all I'm saying, let's just correct it, put it back on the table, correct those mistakes, make it a balanced budget, and pass it. Don't have a problem with that. I do have a problem with the $500,000 and $180,000. I don't think that's what taxpayers' money is supposed to be used for. I believe that should be taken out of there. I just don't believe in that program. It's a program, if that's what they call it, a pilot program. The city should not be lending people money. We had 6,000 homes destroyed or damaged in Camille. We didn't let anybody anything. So I just don't think that's a good program. I don't really see any purpose in it. And I know we had a problem now with Main Street. We're trying to use them as the nonprofit. I have a problem with that. You got the 2 employees work for the mayor, do a great job for us, Laurie and Kay. They do great. I hate to see them get involved in something like this. I know they had to rechange the bylaws, get rid of people that would work for the city, Cliff and Billy Raymond, so they couldn't be on the board. But my problem is, and I know we understand we're supposed to lend when they have fundraisers and stuff, we lend them people. And you do that. We have 2 employees that work for Main Street, the only 2 employees they have. They have a board. The board don't do day-to-day functions. And I don't feel like it's right to run that through the mayor's office. That's just the way I believe. I think there's other ways you can do this. That's not, you can't have the mayor's employee running a nonprofit, then we use the thing to funnel the money back through a nonprofit run by the mayor. I just don't think that's right. I don't think it's ethical. I don't think it's the right thing to do for the city. And then we had another problem with the coding academy. Goes all in hand with the Main Street. Same thing there. That's nothing to do with the city function. You got to run through the Main Street. They're going to try to take over the Brown House. To run the coding through that. I don't think that's right. That's the mayor's 2 employees. The Brown House is owned by that board. We utilize it, for that purpose. But I just think those things are the mistakes that we made that we just need to correct. You need a nonprofit, fine a nonprofit. That's where you got to do it. Doing it that way is not the right thing to do. But the coding thing, I don't think is anything we do. We can't run a school system. Let the schools run the school system. That's not our job as a city. That's not part of the city function. That's not a part of a municipality. We cannot do that. Let somebody else handle that, not us. The only 2 people tried it, both was nonprofits. They graduated 27 people, cost them $2.5 million. We don't need to get into that kind of pricing. And I don't know if they have had a coding, what do you call it, crisis, really don't know. I asked a few people, asked me exactly what is that. I told myself, I don't know. I said, I heard we have a crisis, but I really don't know. Code is code, like anything else. That's probably needed for that. But I don't think that's the function of the city. I just don't think that we need to get involved with something like that. So the 500,000, 180,000, I think should be taken out of there. And I'm asking the council to look at this stuff, because we supposed to control spending. The things we do up here, we vote these things in and out. A lot of things going on in the city we need to do, and I think those are two things that we don't need to do. I see no sense in the city being involved in either one of those. So that's what I believe, and so that's it. And another thing, the only last thing I want to say is, I know we got this stuff back here on about the Point Cadet. I cannot vote for anything on the Point Cadet development until the mayor and the Secretary of State creates a lease. If you can't control the property and you have no lease, then we're wasting our time. We don't wait a $75,000 study, $15,000 a day with these people. That's $90,000. You can't do anything because you don't control a piece of property. So when the mayor and the Secretary of State sit down and create some type of lease, if a developer wants to come in, then you have something to offer them. Without a lease, you have nothing. If I come down here with $100 million and the first thing you tell me, you got to go talk to somebody to get a lease set up, bye, I'm out of here. I'm going back to Michigan. So I just think those things need to be done before you vote any more things on that piece of property on the point, until we have an agreement with the Secretary of State where it can be leased for whatever y'all decide to do that. Don't waste any more money on a piece of land that we don't control. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Guines?
Yes, I wanted to thank, I don't see her here, Sherry Bell. We had a great time this weekend, multicultural festival we had on the town green. Thank you, Mayor, for assisting us in everything that you allowed us to have. We had a great time, all the different flavors of food, the Vietnamese food, Puerto Rican food, Honduran food, and some good old American barbecue sauce and all that kind of good stuff. And we had a great time, had a great band, and I thought we had a great time. So I wanted to thank her, Sherry Bell, for doing that for us. Also, just want to give some kudos to our officers. I think we had another almost train track incident, and they were out there this morning passing out these leaflets, just letting everybody know. I mean, it's kind of hard to miss that big R&R railroad sign that's up there, and a lot of them, they can't seem to be able to read it. So our officers got out there today in the hot sun. They were passing out leaflets warning people about the railroad and passing the word out. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Ms. Newman? Mr. Deming?
Just a question. November 1st is the Biloxi First Roast of Fofo Gillage. Well, how does this work? Is this like a dunking machine? Do we pay to take our shots at you, or?
I think there's a donation card in there. Okay. Mr. Tisdale?
Yes, I have several things. Mr. Abide, when we were here last week, Mr. Lawrence referred to the Main Street administering city grants, and we talked about that, and you were going to research that, I believe. And have you completed your research, or is there any action in that area?
I went ahead and just asked for an Attorney General opinion on these specific set of facts of could this program be run through Main Street? We do have precedent through the Attorney General's opinion that SMPDD can do it, and we asked them specifically for Main Street. So that went out last week.
Okay.
We should have that within 30 days or so.
Okie doke. The other thing that Mr. Lawrence mentioned was this, and which got me to thinking, that what is the status of the lease agreement between the city and the Secretary of State on Point Cadet there? There's been no change in the lease. What would have to change at this point, or does anything need to change at this point?
I mean, the way the lease says, if anyone has any projects or any ideas, you work together and submit them to each other. We submitted for example, the D&E boardwalk, the boardwalk that goes around the green space. That was done by the city with the county port bond funds at the city's expense. We sent the secretary a copy of the bid tabs. He didn't have any objection. We sent him the resolution before we approved the contract. He expressed no objection. We left the contract. He's expressed no objection. Their position is typically to be, present something, we'll look at it, we'll consider it in due course. They were present at the waterfront conference, two of the attorneys there, and on behalf of IHL, they were there. So we feel, as far as this particular application, this was the Tidelands grant of $350,000 that was given without real clarity what it was about. We've had, frankly, conflicting interpretations from two different of our legislators what they think it's about. So to kind of clarify that, we felt it'd be best that we just apply and state we want to use this for these certain, to include these purposes, to include engineering, to include any other soft costs. So as far as asking for permission or waiting for the Secretary of State to allow us to do something, he talks to people and lets us know. We talk to people and let him know. So the property's jointly held, and we're just trying to cooperate and give each other information.
Would it be accurate to say then that whatever we plan to do or are looking at doing, considering doing, he's in the loop on that?
Sure.
I seem to remember some copies, quite honestly, maybe several weeks ago of letters that were sent back and forth, I think.
And this is a Tidelands grant that originates out of the money that he collects from our Tidelands revenue.
Exactly.
So,
Okay.
yes.
All right, I wanted to remind everybody, because I know you're thrilled to hear that I have a Ward 5 meeting tomorrow night at 6:30. The chief's thrilled, I know about that. It's at Snyder Center at 6:30 on Pass Road. It'll be on the second floor. Mr. Creel, has the city issued any, this is a pet project of mine, has the city issued any panhandling licenses to date? Or is any idea, a rough count? Okay, all right, good deal. Thank you. And I know, Mr. Abad, you and I had a conversation a number of weeks ago, and I'm looking at a request for a proposal, perhaps. Well, I think we need a request for a proposal for some sort, for lack of a better term, a promoter, maybe to look at the events at MGM Park for the, the city's entitled, I think it's at 10 events, and we might be able to get more. I mean, by asking, I know we have to work around baseball to some schedule, but to some extent, but I'm thinking we need to take advantage of those opportunities, and I'm thinking it might be great to get somebody out there who knows what they're doing, can maybe make some bucks and help offset the cost of that, of the mayor's favorite note for the next 18 payments.
Yeah, I think we talked about an RFP that would put it on the streets as far as the environment that we'd be looking for events to do. There was a circuit we mentioned about, I think Meridian and Tuscaloosa and Memphis had a amphitheater kind of environment to do that. But yeah, it's our intent to put something to say, hey, we've got 10 events. What's your proposal to the city of Biloxi?
Yeah, and it has been drafted. I think we're just coordinating with Rachel and Keith as far as when that's going to be published, but I would expect that within the next week or so to go out for publication.
Okay,
Requesting a promoter.
Our next council meeting is Tuesday, October 2nd. You think it might, well, I mean, it'd have to be placed on the agenda on Thursday when the agenda's set. Do you think it'll be ready to go by Thursday? Or if it's not the 2nd, it'd be the 16th?
No, to send out an RFP, we don't really need council approval. We just put those out, and,
Put it out there.
and we'll report back what we find out. So
Okay, good deal.
we will give that, we'll move that.
Yeah, I'd love
to
for
the
us to
top.
move forward.
Correct.
And if we do, I'll quit asking every quarter what events we have planned at the MGM Park. Thank you. The other thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to thank Public Works. I know at this time of the year, it's raining off and on. It's the grass doesn't stop growing. You got the beach and all the venues to get ready for cruising the coast. They're really hustling. I appreciate that. So just a big thanks to the Public Works Department. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tisdale. Mr. Barrett? My report, I got a couple of things. First of all, I attended a morning talk, a coffee talk with Chief Boney, and Mr. Barrett had a previous an obligation, so I kind of stood in with that coffee talk, and there was great interest on what's happening in and around the new Citizens Bank, including Elsie Drive, the Blake retirement home, the new fire stations that are going up and what effect that has. And Chief Boney gave a great talk on what's going on with his new gear to prevent carcinogens from entering the fire suit or whatever into the skin. And we just had a good talk for about over an hour and had many people that attended that. So looking forward to more of those talks. I do want to talk about the budget one more time, and I do have a question for council. But you know, we had, like I mentioned last meeting, many workshops that concluded with a final workshop after we had a public hearing on it, if you will. And the council was asked if they were ready to adopt this budget. And to a person, every one of the council members said yes, they were ready to move forward to adopt the budget. So we duly scheduled a meeting to adopt the budget at 1:30. And it took us about 25 minutes to conclude those proceedings. And we concluded with a 3-1 vote to adopt the budget. There is a question about when do you have to be present. And I believe council answered that, but I would ask again, because next week I'm going to be out of town. I plan on phoning in and be present by teleconference. And I just want to make sure I meet the test of that. Is there a requirement for a 5-day advertising, and is it legal for me to teleconference in to the meeting next week?
Yes, it is. I mean, up until 2016, as part of the telephone or video, if anyone did that, they had to give a 5-day notice. And I think the legislature in 2017 recognized a lot of times this telephone is it's more of an urgent circumstance. You don't have 5 days notice. So they took away the 5-day notice out of that particular statute, and it just says you can attend. And I think Mr. Lawrence's specific question was, does that make a quorum? Do we have to have that many people physically present? And I stand by what I said last week. The SD's opinion makes that clear. You can have a quorum by teleconferencing or video. We had a quorum. It was a legal meeting. It was a legal vote. And as far as you phoning in, the key is that we want to have that here and have you audible and have your votes recorded and present. And it needs to be here because this is where the public comes. The public shouldn't have to figure out where are the people meeting, even if they're all meeting by telephone. But the meeting and the conference equipment should be set up here. So.
Thank you, council. And the other thing I want to add to that, in great respect to any council member that differs with certain actions, but if any council member wants to propose a change or an amendment or thinks that something needs to be corrected, put it on the agenda. Propose it on the agenda. We'll put it on the agenda. If we have a motion and a second, we'll all kind of chime in and we'll consider those changes. And that's all. That concludes my report.
Mr. President.
Sure.
The law that you give me, it states, says a live video, period. That's the law that you hand me yourself. It says that on that line, live video. I didn't make that up. You give it to me, so I'm reading what you gave me.
Yeah.
So that's why I've said you have to have a live video. So you're seeing, if Felix wasn't here and finally he's on the video, I have no problem with that. But I mean, that's what it states.
A specific attorney general opinion that said, I want to appear by video conference. Will I count for a quorum? And they said, yes. Quorum will count if you're there by telephone or video conference.
It don't say on telephone. It says live video.
Well, it does say that. I'll show it to you afterwards.
It's the same thing you give me. That's why I'm trying to get this thing straight. All I'm doing is say correct the budget. When we talking about passing the budget, they didn't have $11.5 million mistake in it either. That was done later.
All right, gentlemen.
So,
thank you. Thank you. That concludes council reports. We'll move on to citizens' comments. We have a total of 45 minutes. Each citizen has a total of 3 minutes to talk on any topic that they choose. Raise your hand to be recognized, come up to the front, have a seat at the table. There's a document to sign in your name and your address, and you need to state it in the microphone clearly for the clerk to record. We'll start on this side of the room. Is there anyone who would like to come up and say anything? Anyone on this side of the room would like to come up and say anything? Anyone in the back of the room? That was quick and easy. Citizens' comments is now closed. We'll move on to the policy agenda.
Ordinance to approve a zoning map amendment to authorize a change in zoning for a portion of parcel of land from RS10 Low Density Single Family Residential to MB Neighborhood Business for property identified as 2730 Pass Road.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Tisdale. We have a second? Second by Ms. Newman. Discussion, Mr. Tisdale.
Yeah, and I know we usually don't have discussion for a first reading, but just one question. In reading through the transcript, it appeared that there was a condition that is that this only the front portion of the property would be zoned, and it never did state in the transcript anywhere whether that was agreed to by Mr. Ford's representative or not. Okay. Right, so this is clearly understood. It's just that it's just the roughly 200 feet in depth of what's fronting Pass Road. That's all that's being rezoned. Correct. Okay. Thank you very much. That's all.
All right, anybody else have any? I'll give a little leeway on this if anybody has any other questions. Otherwise, it's our first reading. We'll move on to the next ordinance, second reading.
Ordinance to amend the zoning district map by changing 2 parcels of land from CBD Community Business to WF Waterfront for a property identified as 1994 Beach Boulevard and 1980 Beach Boulevard, and that was previously moved by Ms. Newman and seconded by Mr. Tisdale.
Ms. Newman? Mr. Tisdale?
I just have one question. This doesn't affect any of the property associated with Treasure Bay south of Beach Boulevard. And what is the status of that property? Does it belong to Treasure Bay, or does Treasure Bay lease that property, those parcels south of 90? Yeah. Okay. I was just curious. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Ordinance amending section 10521 to include excursion vessels for the City of Biloxi Small Craft Harbor and Point Cadet Marina berthing rates.
All right. Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, I said, I think Mike Glenn and them, they worked on this here. I think they came up with a fair price on everything. So I don't see any problem why we should change it. I think they went to he already had a couple dealing with 2 of the bigger excursion boats. So, I mean, I don't know, we're not really doing anything but approving what we have on the table in front of us, correct? They're not making any changes?
The reason we propose the ordinance change is that we do not have a type of vessel, a category of vessel in our ordinance today that covers excursion boats, and we have many of different types, and there'll be many more. We talked to a sailboat just today that wants to do sailing cruises. That wouldn't be a charter boat, and it wouldn't be a fishing boat. So what we need is another category so that we can effectively rate and charge a boat for what its number of passengers, what its size, what its impact on the harbor is. And each one would be different. Of course, each one would be a separate lease that would come to council for approval, just as this last one is. So So all we're doing with this ordinance change is putting a new category in. To use that new category, we still got to come back to the council every time with the lease. And if you don't think the number that we've negotiated is fair, you know, it's up for discussion then. That's what we need is we just need the ordinance to be a little more inclusive.
Thank you.
All right, and I just have a couple questions. So if there was no category and we had nothing for the other boats that we've recently kind of designed or crafted some leases for, that's okay to do it because we didn't have a category for those, so we could proceed forward and create something even though we didn't have an ordinance to do that?
The example was, of course, the best example was the Ship Island boat.
Right.
A boat that carries a great many passengers. We didn't think a $3 per foot rate was appropriate for a boat that carries that many passengers. Captain Scrimetta announced on TV today that he's going to have carried 50,000 passengers to Ship Island from this location and Gulfport this year. So $3 a foot just didn't seem right for 50,000 passengers. So we just want the wiggle room to be able to negotiate a fair amount. In the past, actually, before this ordinance changed, we negotiated a rate for the Ship Island boat and brought it to you and you approved it. We negotiated a rate for the Betsy Ann. We brought it to you and you approved it. But we were kind of out there on a limb because we really didn't have any backup.
Well, I just believe we're sort of a little bit in uncharted waters, and perhaps we need to consider for boats of a certain length that are not in any of these categories, that are an excursion boat of a certain length, fall in a certain range, and maybe boats in a bigger length or bigger capacity fall in another range. I don't know. Or
It's very difficult to pick a rule and stick with it. I'll just lay out the one today, a very long sailboat that's a 40-foot sailboat that's in the harbor today, wants to start doing cruises. Now they're going to be running a business. So what do we charge them? Do we charge them $3 a foot, $6 a foot?
And it needs to be a case-by-case situation, you know, and look at what is fair to run an operation, because it is an operation, it is a site, it's a business site. And that's what I think we're trying to do, is establish a category that we can, you know, with the council approval, say this is fair to the citizens of Biloxi and the use of the facility to run a business. Case by case, though.
Okay.
All of which come to you. Well,
okay. You want to add that verbiage to it? Okay. All right. Anyone else have any comments? Call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution approving a master plan update and conditional use to authorize additional land to be added to the existing Treasure Bay Casino and Hotel Complex site for property identified as 1994 Beach Boulevard and 1980 Beach Boulevard.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Newman, seconded by Mr. Tisdale. Discussion, Ms. Newman. Mr. Tisdale?
Yeah, it's great to see somebody expanding their property, their facility. That's always good news, particularly in this market. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Tisdale, seconded by Mr. Gines. All in favor? Or we need discussion, right?
Discussion.
Discuss first.
Yep,
Yeah.
7-0. 7-0. All right, we'll start with Mr. Tisdale since you made the motion.
Sure. Let's go to item D. This involves key impact strategies, and I just saw something in the paper that piqued my interest, and it mentioned that Mr. Hurd is not a registered lobbyist in the state. Is that accurate? Does he need to be, or asking for a friend? No, I'm asking
Yeah,
for
no, I did ask him about that because I heard that, and he he was confused by it. He said he thought he did register online last year. He was following up with the Secretary of State to see why that was not on the website. And the person in charge of that, he said, would be in Wednesday. So I said, well, if they're not there till Wednesday, I guess it'd be okay. And then I saw that in the paper this morning.
So he's attempting to verify that?
He is verifying that.
Okay.
I mean, he is registered in D.C., and I know he has other clients in here, and I know that he's met with Secretary Hoseman, who's in charge of registering lobbyists. So that was kind of news to us as well.
Yeah, anybody else have any discussions on this topic?
I do. Just a suggestion. As a council, instead of discussing this issue, why don't we table it until Mr. Hurd can demonstrate to us that he's qualified with the state to lobby? I mean, I would motion it to table it.
All right, we have a motion to table for how long? Until subject to call, until he approves?
Yeah, definitely.
We have a motion to table until there's evidence that he is registered for the state and can be an approved legal lobbyist. Seconded by Ms. Newman.
Discussion?
Discussion?
So I have no idea what the penalty is if I'm not a registered lobbyist and I'm lobbying folks. What do they do? Give me a haircut, fine me, send me to prison? What? Wasn't that funny, Mr. Mayor? It was not that funny to warrant that response. Peter, any idea? I'm just curious. What do they do, or do they send you a letter saying comply or else? Or
It's more his issue than ours. So I don't know the penalty, but
okay. Is anything happening in the next week?
no, I think tabling in 1 week would be. I don't think that would affect anything.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, so that item would be tabled until there's evidence that,
6-1.
okay. All right, Mr. Tisdale, you got a couple more?
Which one are you doing? Was he doing H?
Yeah. The- Right. Also, the letters attached as Exhibit A that they sent the grant award April 9th, and it was also a $700,000 boardwalk grant given with that. Now, we applied for that in the summer of this past summer, or the summer of actually 2017. So that was a grant that we had applied for. This 350 really was not applied for. So to get the clarification like you're speaking of, we actually need to have a application in their files for this grant that technically looks like it's already been given, but we want to get it into the file system of what we could use it for and make that clear.
On H, so if we deal with H, the problem I have is the same thing I said before. This is for engineering and designing, $350,000. It's listed like that. I had no problem with $700,000, $350,000 to design something that you can't build or can't approve because we don't control that land is a waste of $350,000. I don't care where the money comes from. It's taxpayers' money. You can't design something you don't control the land. You don't have a lease, you can't control the land, you can't design anything. And this state's in there, that's for design and engineering. So that's a waste of $350,000. That part. So there's no way I can support. If I gotta vote against the whole thing, I'll vote against the whole thing, but I'm not spending $350,000 on something we don't own and control, or you don't even have a lease. So, I mean, that's just a waste of $350. I don't care where the money come from. It's all taxpayers' money.
Okay, anyone else on H? Okay,
Excuse me. The next one is 5R. It's adding Mr. Eckert to the list of legal services as special counsel, but it doesn't list a rate of compensation. Should that be included?
It's in the back page.
Did I,
It
or
should
did
be
I,
in the contract. It's the
in the back
same,
page,
did I miss that?
evidently. You got that in the paralegal, got both of them listed.
yeah, George is correct.
Yep,
It's in the
back
exhibit.
page.
Once again, huh?
Once again.
You want that noted in the record? All right. Let me go to,
He was due.
on
On that
5,
same one, Paul, my question is, you hire him as a court attorney, can you do both? Is that a problem with doing both of them? Right above him, you hired him as a court.
He's currently already
Right.
sort of the assistant prosecutor, and what we're actually doing is, we are increasing Sarah Reese's compensation by,
8,000. I saw
3,000.
that, 43,000.
well, it's 4,000 total. She's being increased 4,000, he's being reduced 4,000, but we do have a need for additional special counsel services, certain things like going after forfeiture money. We have some criminal type lawsuits that he could assist with, and we do have a need for that level of more police litigation that we could use him on.
I didn't have a problem with that. My problem was, can he do both jobs? Is that not a conflict of interest? Being a court attorney for us, and then turn around and working under you to do other things? That's all I'm trying to get straight.
No, I mean, some city attorneys are also the municipal prosecutor, so no, that's not a problem at all.
You just wanted to make sure that, and so I was wondering why that was 35 and 43 with the difference at 8,000 and those two, so.
Now, they were both at 39, I think.
So I also have a question. Does this will come out of the legal budget? And
Yeah.
it doesn't affect that there's no amendments to the legal budget in order to compensate or
No,
or
the
take
line
care?
item for them, they were grouped together. The line
So-
item for them, so it's revenue neutral as far
Okay.
as
All
the
right,
legal.
thank you.
I have 2 more, Kenny.
Go ahead,
I-
Mr.
Item
Mr.
5T is the Biloxi Housing Authority to allow use of their property there on West Beach for the parking of vehicles towed by the police department. Probably won't be any towed this year, but in case there are. Is the Housing Authority charging? That I didn't see any charges in there. They're allowing this out of the goodness of their collective hearts. Okay. And then I missed one that I had noted here earlier on item 5F. That's a risk management insurance program. And a couple of questions I have. Are we adding any coverage or reducing any coverage?
Expert to the table, please.
The only change.
State your name for the record so that we can
Frank
duly
Bordeaux,
record it.
BXS Insurance.
Thank you.
The only change was a $24,000 decrease from what I presented to you in the budget. We were still negotiating with carriers at that time. Our self-insured retention did go up $50,000. We've realized over the past several years a decrease in that self-insured retention, and it's nothing to do with the city of Biloxi other than cities this size are assuming more of the risk. So those are the 2 changes from what I presented in the budget when we presented that.
So there's a reduction of 24,000 and an increase of,
Of your self-insured retention, your deductible for all intents.
gotcha. And how much was that for?
It's $50,000.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's pretty much the only difference?
Yes,
if
sir.
If I understood. No. That's it, Mr.
We do
Blair.
have additional values. There's no changes in any other terms and conditions. We added some vessels between budget time to now. The total premium is a decrease of $24,000, and our deductible went up $50,000.
Thank you, Mr. Bordeaux.
A question for you, Frank. Can you explain to the board the property that we insure that we don't own? You said it has to be through a contract?
Yes, sir.
There's several pieces of property we don't own the building, but we insure.
Correct. There's several properties that this municipality and other municipalities cover, and that is through a contract. We have to show insurable interest, and so either we are the recipient of grant money and we are responsible to pay back that grant money, or we have entered into a contract with a separate party, the owner of the property. But in this case, the different museums that we discussed, we are the payee. And so should there be a claim, we get paid, and we choose as a city, or the city can choose whether to rebuild or repair that property, but we control the process.
And then these grants, how long does that last? How long do they hang on the property?
That would be case by case. Every one of them's, I would imagine, different. I have no idea. That's all I do is look at the insurability, and if the council and the administration tells me to add a building, we make sure there's insurability, insurable interest. If there is, then we can add it to the schedule. If there's not, we'll go back to legal and say we need clarification on insurable interest.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Tisdale, you done? I want to get one out of the way. I just got one on here, and we'll continue on with the other council members. But item B, and I know we discussed it earlier, it seems like we've come up with maybe an agreement or an understanding, and this is in regards with the Sailfish, which does the Biloxi shrimping tours. As noted, this is a 65-year-old business that's operated in Biloxi and provides a unique experience for our tourists and our locals. And so, Mike, can you tell me, have we reached something that's agreeable?
I think so, Councilman. We've always taken the position that Biloxi needs a shrimping tour, such as the vessel Sailfish offers us today. We just felt like they should pay a little more. We've been back and forth for 4 months now. What we're proposing at this point, just a minor change to what is in your package, is a language that reads that the vessel Sailfish and the Biloxi Cruise Company, LLC, would pay the City of Biloxi Ports and Harbors Division monthly the sum of $200 plus $30 power fee plus $15 environmental fee for a total of $245. That's the monthly base rent plus 7%, $17.15 for a total of $262.15 per month.
And when would that go into effect? What's acceptable for the administration?
We'd prefer it became immediate. However, in our negotiation, they're asking that we not start it till the beginning of the new season, which would be March. So the city would be willing to start that in March. Of course, now we've got to collect back all the back payments that we haven't collected during the time that we were in negotiation. So they'll stay at that existing rate till 1 March, and then it will increase. We'd like to sign the contract now, but have it effective 1 March. Have the rate change effective 1 March.
All right.
And it's my
So we need an
understanding-
amendment, we would need an amendment to this resolution B to make those changes?
Right. I have a copy of a lease with that change made that I'd be willing to put into the minutes.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion for those changes. Moved by Mr. Demings. Second by Ms. Newman. Any discussion on the change?
Yeah, I do have a question. When the rates, we've changed the rates a number of times over the past several years,
No.
once or twice.
To my
I'm
knowledge, the
talking
rate has
over
not
the
changed.
about the past 5 years, maybe not since the new administration, but I know that we were at something dollars a square foot, and then we went up to
Linear
$6 a square foot.
Linear foot, not a square
Linear foot, not square foot. And then we went back to $3 a square foot. But the latest rate changes occurred when? Do you recall?
Early in this administration, I think we changed from $6 back to $33 a foot for charter boats.
Charter boats.
And, okay, all right, that's it, thank you.
This, by the way, this rate ends up being $6 a foot. That's where we go back for this particular vessel. But it's not per foot. It's just a flat rate that we negotiated,
Excellent.
but it turns out to be.
All right.
Now, the Ship Island boat's $10 a foot, for example. So they're all different.
Any other discussion?
Still in council.
And the signage that we have goes with that? Don't we have a sign out there for them? That's part
the
of the
lease-
contract?
Talking about a sign,
Yeah, you had a sign advertising them. We don't advertise anybody else, but you do have a sign for them. So that's all part of this contract, correct?
yeah, the signage is listed specifically in the contract as what signage they're allowed to have, including a sign out on Highway 90, what's called a departure board, or a sign like you see at where the fishing boats go out, that's there, that tells when they leave every day, and several other directional signs that help people find the boat. That's all listed in the lease as an amenity.
Are we gonna do anything else for all the boats in there, other boats? Are you gonna put a sign out for anybody else? I had no problem with that, but I'm just saying, because there's a lot of charter boats in there.
Well,
Could we run a
there are a lot of
reel board or
charter boats
something?
here. This is the only one that's an excursion boat that we have a lot of passengers show up and wander around looking for, in busloads that come in.
I said I had no problem with that. I was just asking if we're gonna do that for the other boats, anybody else. Or you ought to consider that.
We have talked in the administration about putting an electronic board out on the Highway 90 that listed all of the, and cycled, listing all of the types of boats that are, and services that are in the harbor. So we may choose to do that down the road, so that every boat that was in the harbor got a little look-see as it rotated around.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? We're going to amend it to include the new lease terms that Mr. Leonard read into the record and that he has a copy of.
Just stating that it's gonna, Kenny just stating it's gonna start March the 1st, correct?
Yep. All right, so we got a motion and a second. All in favor? Those opposed? All right, the motion, the amendment is approved, 7-0. And so that's in the record. When we vote on the consent agenda, it will become, I guess we'll approve it unless somebody has some exceptions on it. I'd just like to add, thank y'all. I know this seems like a frivolous subject and that it's a small thing, but you know, like the guy that was throwing the starfish back in the ocean, they said, "What are you doing that for?" Doesn't matter, you know. And he said, "It matters to this one," you know, and he throws it back in the ocean. So it does matter, even the small stuff. All right, we'll
pretty neat.
continue on. Mr. Lawrence, you got anything on the
That was
consent
pretty
agenda?
unique.
It's an old.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
old.
I feel
I'm
better-
actually old
I feel
school
better
sometimes
now.
too.
Is that an
So,
old Croatian story?
but you matter too. So you got any other things on the consent agenda, Mr. Lawrence?
No, we went through all of them.
All right, Mr. Guines.
I think we called all of them. I'd like to be the barber for Dr. Tisdale, though.
All right, Mr. Deming.
And I know George brought up E, the $750 contribution to the benevolent, the Slavic Benevolent Association. Huh?
Advertisement. Program ad.
Right. What's your relationship to that organization?
I'm a member.
Just a member.
I'm not an official. I'm part of the golf tournament, though. I'm part of the golf tournament committee. But we've been doing this for 40-something years, and the city's been taking an ad out for a number of years.
Look,
Just another ad like.
Listen, that starfish matters too. So.
Anyways, Peter, just something on the Keith Hurd resolution. I know we've tabled it, but on page 3, paragraph 1, line 2, the word budget is spelled wrong. Just point out.
Are you sure?
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Barrett, can you kind of take us home on the consent agenda here, please? Okay, all in favor of the consent agenda? I'll get the exceptions after we approve it. All in favor? Those opposed? Okay, carries. Now we'll get the exceptions. Mr. Lawrence?
H.
Which one?
H.
H?
Can't do that when you don't
Okay.
control that, no lease. That's engineering, waste of money.
Is that it?
Yep.
All right, Mr. Guines? Ms. Newman? Mr. Deming? Deming is E. Nay. Mr. Tisdale?
Yes, on item I, and I want to explain that the reason I'm in opposition to item I is not for the project itself, but for the contractor who did a couple of projects in Ward 5 and for all practical purposes was completed, and yet they didn't close out the project for almost a year. So I still have heartburn about that. That's all. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Barrett?
I'm recusing myself from item H, and I'm voting no on M.
N?
M,
M?
as in Mary.
Just him.
All right, and I have none. Okay, we'll move on to the code enforcement hearings. Mr. Creel, proceed when you're ready.
Case A on the agenda, Harrison Hall, 262 Brown Street. This one came in 30 days ago and was granted a 30-day extension. We have since found out that the house is in foreclosure. And it's still in violation.
All right, is there anyone here to speak on behalf of Harrison Hall, 262 Brown Street? There being no one, this case is closed.
Case B on the agenda, Margaret Galloway Estate, 421 Benaki. That case has been resolved.
Okay. All right, code enforcement hearings are now closed. Motion to approve the routine agenda.
I'll second it.
Mr. Guines and Mr. Tisdale. Any discussion, Mr. Guines? Mr. Tisdale? Mr. Lawrence?
So nothing came in. We got the $1.9 million last week, but nothing this week. And what you said it's coming? You got anything else? You got to have more than that coming. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, anyone else?
Can I ask for something we have to do after you do the routine?
The what?
I'm going to ask for something after we do the routine.
After the
All right.
Okay, we'll give you some leeway there. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Routine agenda is adopted. Mr. Lawrence wants to have a comment on some unspecified subject.
No, it's the budget. I'd like to have it put back before it does, corrected.
I
And
would, bless
God
you.
bless you.
Bless you. Mr. Lawrence, go ahead and put it on the next agenda. Just, ask the clerks to put it on the next agenda.
I'd like to do that. I'd like to have it corrected numbers, and I'd honestly like to have it balanced. Like I said, there's no reason for us to pass a deficit budget. None. All you're doing is moving $1 million, whatever it is, $1.4 million, $1.5 million, put it in there, balance the budget. I just think we should do that as a city. There's no reason for us not to have it balanced and corrected. There's no reason for that.
Chair, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Lawrence, second by Mr. Guines. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.